order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mandy, would you please call the roll?
DeYoung.
Here.
Branderhorst.
Here.
Danstra.
Here.
Hopkins.
Here.
Spore.
Here.
Carlstone. He must not be on the line yet.
Okay. All right, for those of you attending by the telephone, you will have an opportunity to provide verbal comments during the dedicated public forums and public hearings. I would ask that you would please keep your microphones or telephones on mute until the time you wish to speak. Can I get a motion for approval of the tentative agenda?
So moved.
Support. Brander, Horst, Vanstra, any discussion? All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Branderhorst.
Yes.
Danstra.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Spore.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
All right, I would like to request the reappointment of Mark DeYoung as Mayor Pro Tem. The Mayor Pro Tem performs the duties of mayor in cases of absence or inability. Mark has been a council member since 1978 and was first appointed Mayor Pro Tem in 1984. This reappointment is for a 2-year term expiring in January of 2024. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Support.
Hopkins, Spore, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Spore.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Abstain.
Branderhorst.
Yes.
Danstra.
Yes. Motion passed. I would like to request the reappointment of Mandy Smith as city clerk. City code requires council to appoint a city clerk at the council meeting in January following the regular city election. Mandy has served as city clerk since 2016. This reappointment is for a 2-year term expiring in January of 2024. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Support. Brander, Horst, DeYoung, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Branderhorst.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Danstra.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Spore.
Yes.
Motion passed. I would like to request the appointment of Randy Bogart as the new fire chief effective January 5, which is tomorrow, I believe. Randy was born and raised in Pella. He is well known in the community as he has served as a volunteer with the Pella Fire Department since January of 1985. His total 37 years of service to the department includes serving as captain from 2010 to 2020, as well as serving as assistant chief for the past year in preparation for this opportunity. All members of the fire department recently voted unanimously to recommend Randy to serve as our next fire chief. Currently, Randy is an owner and partner of Pella Concrete Contractors. Randy and his wife Hazel reside in Pella and are proud parents of 2 grown sons. This appointment is for a 2-year term expiring in January of 2024. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved. Support.
Hopkins, DeYoung, discussion. Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Hopkins.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Branderhorst.
Yes.
Danstra.
Yes.
Spore.
Yes.
Motion passed. Randy's here. Congratulations. Thank you for your willingness to serve. We really appreciate that. Doug Van Gorkum is retiring from chief after how many years?
I believe it's been, Randy, I believe it's been over 16 years.
16 years,
Yes.
so I don't believe Doug's here tonight. We'll honor him at some point when he's going to be around. So anyway, congratulations. We all know you'll do a great job. So, have any comments you want to make to us or anyone?
Thank you to you and council for your support.
Okay. All right. I would like to request the reappointment of Lyle Vandermeiden to the Board of Adjustment. Lyle has served on the board since 2002 and attended 3 of the 4 meetings held in the last 12 months. If approved, Lyle's new 5-year term would expire on January 1 of 2027. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Support.
Branderhorst DeYoung, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Stanström.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Spore.
Yes.
Motion passed. All right, at this time, we have an opportunity to hear from the public. Anyone wishing to address council regarding agenda items. So we would appreciate if discussion here is on any item that's on the agenda. If you do, please state your name and address. And so last time, some of you abused my 3-minute request. And I was a very nice guy, and I didn't cut anybody off. But please, please try to keep it to 3 minutes, because I do not want to have to cut you off. What you need to say can be said in 3 minutes. So please. Mandy asked if I wanted a timer, and I didn't want to do that. But please, 3 minutes. So, with that said, who wants to speak first?
Mayor, I have a question, and I have asked this, but should we make our statements about the library policy under H or now?
Now, because it is on the agenda.
Okay.
Our policy and planning meeting is on the agenda. So, yes, if you want to speak about the library, what we're discussing later, now would be the time to make those comments.
I'll start it off. Keith Oxbergen, 224 South Street. I want to thank some members tonight for our Iowa legislator, John Dunwell, for being here and listening to us and getting the feeling of his constituents. Greg Hartzell's here. He was in for 6 years. He was off for 4 years. He's coming back to run again. Ken Rosemond informed me he was coming, so I'm not sure if he's here yet or not. And Dustin Hyde, I don't believe he showed up either. But those people are interested in what's going on here tonight, and I want to thank them for their interest in what's going on with their citizens. You know, I want to challenge each one of us to at least contact these guys at least a minimum of once a month. If we'd been doing that, we probably wouldn't be here talking about this tonight. So it's really up to us as citizens to step forward and contact these guys in the State House and the City Council, the county, you know, so if we could all be better citizens, and we could probably avoid a lot of these problems. And after that, now I'd like to talk about policy. We're here to talk about the library book policy, but I want a bigger picture than that. I want to talk about the policy of the cities. 10 years from now, can you imagine the Union Street Players at the Opera House having a play on a book that we're talking about tonight? Can you imagine that 10 years from now? Oh, no, that can never happen, right? 10 years ago, we said that about a book in the library. Oh, that'll never happen. So we probably should focus on a big policy for the whole city. You know, this is the second time this year we're hearing about some serious issues about morality. How many times are we talk about it next year? You know, so I'm really hoping we can get some policies here. You know, drag queens, it happens. It's going to happen here. You know it's coming. Oh, no, it'll never happen here, right? Yeah, it's going to happen. West Market Park. You know, if we allow this book in the library, we allow other things to happen in our parks. It's okay for the library, it's okay for the other public places, right? or Big Rock Park is the number 6 spot for hooking up for the transgender and the queer community. You go on their website, Big Rock Park here in our town is the number 6 spot in the state of Iowa. We need a bigger policy. We need a policy covers this town and this community.
Keith, that's 3 minutes, thanks.
Thank you for your time.
Let's see, is
No, the other one is our mic.
My name is Robin Martin, and I live at 1224 Big Rock Park Road in the 3rd Ward of Pella. I urge the council to make no changes in the ordinance governing our public library and continue the city's historic relationship with our library trustees and professional staff. Regarding the library's selection policy, I strongly support the decision of our Public Library Board of Trustees to keep the adult graphic memoir, Genderqueer, in our library's book collection. Its author, Maya Kababi, began the project in response to an assignment in graduate school. She honestly and openly depicts her personal struggle with sexuality and the difficulty of coming out to her family as queer. The winner of multiple awards, it has become nationally acclaimed as, and I quote, a touching guide on gender identity, what it means and how to think about it for parents, advocates, friends, and humans everywhere. I read the complaints against the book by some in our community. They admit that they have not read the book. I have. The short reasons they gave against it appeared to be quotes taken from one internet site, the Iowa Standard. Images they cited were taken out of context in order to portray the book as pornographic or obscene. Pornography is illegal, and libraries do not provide pornography in their collections. Taken as a whole, this memoir is a piece that has literary merit. Parents have the right to set restrictions for their own children, I totally agree. But no person or group has the right to deny access to all others, all other readers. That is censorship, and censorship has no place in our democracy. I support our libraries protecting and upholding intellectual freedom and our freedom to read. The current selection policy and review process has served carefully and clearly to consider community standards without bias while protecting our First Amendment right. The danger inherent in censorship
20
is
seconds, right?
not knowing, being denied access to information. And regarding library governance, I urge the council to retain the language in our current city ordinance, chapter 22, Library Board of Trustees. Let's keep the appointment of trustees by the mayor with the council's approval and preserve the manner in which our library trustees exercise their powers and duties directly for the good of all of Pella, library users, and the community. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Ann McCullough Kelly. I reside at 1208 Broadway Street in the 2nd Ward of Pella. I'm a 15-year resident of Pella. My husband and 11-year-old child stand with me, and the following statement I make in support of the Board of Trustees of the Pella Public Library regarding their decision to retain the graphic adult memoir Genderqueer in the library shelves. Addressing a few concerns regarding reviewing the policy, I know those concerns consider that the book does not reflect the community standards of Pella. Suggestions of withholding funding from the library until the book is removed from the shelves, and that the problem lies in the collection development policy, which is on the agenda tonight. At the heart of these concerns is the constitutional right to free speech guaranteed by the First Amendment and the dangers of censorship. I have contacted all of you with details regarding the American Library Association Library Bill of Rights the ethical guidelines that govern public library services, including our library, as well as the legal precedents from the Supreme Court that uphold the content of the Library Bill of Rights. I also reviewed the Iowa Code 728 on obscenity, which protects the contents of books like genderqueer and does not prohibit public libraries from having these materials in their collections. There is a clear path of legal protection for the Pella Public Library's current collection development policy, as it adheres to both the ALA Library Bill of Rights, upheld by the Supreme Court, and following our state codes. So to withhold funding from the Pella Public Library, which I know has been something that's been asked of you, until the book Genderqueer is removed from the shelves, is an act of censorship. It is also a slippery slope for repeated requests of materials being removed or prohibited because the content is personally offensive. The problems lie not with the collection development policy, but in the opinions and viewpoints of those asking you to consider restricting individuals' access to information. Again, a constitutionally protected right, because the content of that information is personally offensive. Finally, the concern of making decisions that reflect the community standards of Pella. What are those standards? And are that we are a community who believes in restricting rights guaranteed by the First Amendment, that is the best response to policing literary content we find offensive. That we are a community who in the 15 and a half years I've been here claims to be welcoming, yet are we prepared to actively engage in practices that discriminate against people because of their sexual orientation, gender identity, race, culture, and religion? Because that's what's really at the heart of these concerns that have been expressed regarding this book. This is about whether Pella is truly a welcoming community. It's more than just this book. Are we open to having the hard conversations about diversity, discrimination, prejudice, and the right of everyone to have some reasonable assurance of safety and security? So I encourage you to retain the collection development policy of the Pella Public Library as it currently stands. Thank you.
My name is Evelyn Nickel, and I'm at 10th Lincoln Street, somewhere in there. I'm right on the corner. And I've been in Pella for over 30 years, and I don't think this is about cutting off people who are changing or different or anything like that. And I was at the meeting for the library, and I think what it really hit people was that there were like over 50 people there concerned because the collections, they had gone over it in February or whatever, and they had said, yeah, this is the policy. But anybody who's paying any attention to what's going on in this world is that things change. We've been talking about what's been going on from 2020 to now is just, whoa, it's like drinking from a fire hose. And these things are all coming at us. And I think what we're asking is not to censor per se. People can still get the book at the library. It just doesn't have to be out there open to kids or that check out adult situations to find it. It's a graphic novel. It's like it's pictures, and I don't know how you can say that you take pictures out of context when those pictures are showing two males obviously having sex. I don't know how you take those pictures out of context when you show them masturbating. I don't know how you take pictures out of context when they're talking about using a dildo. Those things are not out of context. Those things are something that if a young person sees that, it's going to impact them for a long time. So what we're asking is, you know what, things are changing in so many ways that it's important for us as a community to say, where are our boundaries? What really are our standards? Where do we say, enough. You know, we see cities in California and whatever, they've all of a sudden become a sanctuary city, and they're not gonna have this or that anymore. Because the people of the city have said, you know what? All this stuff that's trying to flood us is not good for the community as a whole. And so I guess that's what we're asking is, as you're looking at all of this, the world is changing way too fast for us to assume that what we've done a year ago, 6 months ago, is still viable. And that, yes, we have to take everybody into consideration, but the most important thing is to keep morality. And that's a tricky thing because people are trying to stretch it and push it all over the place. What are our standards? What will we stand for and what won't we stand for? In the name of God, we've got to figure that out real soon. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tina Hobble, 603 Spruce Drive, Second Ward. I've heard people talk about this book. It has won awards. The book is very, very helpful to not small children, to young adults that don't know their sexuality. We're not the morality police here. Everybody believes their own thing. So to say that we're going in the wrong direction, I agree with that, but I feel we're going in the wrong direction where, yes, we're changing. We have an LGBTQ community. We can't alienate them from this discussion. To put the book behind where you have to be an adult to check it out. That could be a thing, but then it's kind of going away from what this book was written about. Let me think I get my words here. It's just that we need to open up and truly be a city of refuge. We aren't today. I've lived here altogether about 25 years, and I spent time in Minnesota. And coming back here, I remembered everything that I didn't miss when I left. And I think it's a great community that we have, I really do, but like I said, we're not the moral police. Everybody has their own belief. I agree with what are the community standards. Me personally, I like a vote, and I like my voice to be heard rather than a group to tell me what is moral and what isn't. That's basically all I got.
Hi, I'm Sherry Scher at 229 East First Street, and I've been hearing some logic fallacies and some different ways of spreading things that should be big picture that I disagree with. I think that we need to have the parents in charge of the morality, not the city, and I believe that the library trustees should have to say in this. As some people have pointed out, censorship should have no place here in Pella. And the city shouldn't be the morality police, the parents should be. And that's really all I have.
My name's Allie Thomas. I live at 1706 Union Court. I'm here to lend my voice in support of our public library as a place of intellectual freedom, a place of inclusion, and a place free from censorship. I support our librarians as professionals and support their current procedures for procuring and shelving books. The library exists to serve the entire community. I can request a book, and so can anybody else. Keeping genderqueer on the shelf could be life-giving and perhaps life-saving for someone who is questioning their identity and looking for a story that resonates with them. For me, reading the book was an empathy-building exercise. It reminded me that my experience in life, my story, is but one among humanity, and it's not the only one that matters. Yes, there are illustrations my kids don't need to see yet, but the book is on my shelf at home, and when you flip through the illustrations, the ones in questions don't jump out because they are part of this person's narrative, the full context of the story. My kids will not be scarred or hurt by this book, but someone could be hurt by changing how it's shelved or taking it out entirely. Genderqueer aside, if we were discussing a different book, the answer would be the same. Reducing access to books, censoring certain works, or changing library policy based on one vocal group isn't right. My name is Michelle Jones, over the 1117 Sunset Avenue. I'm gonna try not to cry this time. I just want to reiterate, I said the same thing last time. Really the concern with this book is not the story, it's not the text, it is the pictures. The pictures are pornographic in nature, they are cartoons, it is cartoon pornography, and if a child opens the book that is on the shelf that they could very easily grab, whether it's a 5-year-old or a 15-year-old, they're not going to read the entire book. Maybe a 15-year-old will, but a child won't. They'll flip through the pictures and they'll see cartoon pornography. You guys had copies of the images, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They're completely inappropriate pictures for children. If those pictures were surrounded by scripture, I would be objecting to the book. I don't care what the words say, I care what the pictures are, because that is what is not only, it's not offensive, it's damaging. It's not inappropriate, it's damaging. It's pornography, it's damaging for children, and as a city, we should have a standard to protect our children and not sexualize them, and I think everyone hopefully can agree on that. As far as community standards go, I know the library board likes to put their standards with the American Library Association. The American Library Association is not their governing body. They don't pay the bills. We pay the bills. You all are their governing body. They answer to you. They don't answer to the American Library Association. And they answer to our community standards, not those set by the American Library Association, which again, as a reminder, is the association that brought a lawsuit against the government for trying to put filters on the computers so the children couldn't access porn. They are pro-pornography for children. They are a leftist activist political organization. They have nothing, I mean, they are not some intellectual hierarchy that we answer to. This is our library, Pella's library. We would like it to reflect our values, and our values value children, value keeping them innocent and protecting them from images that are in the book. Again, I don't care about the text, I care about the pictures, and no one should be able to flip to that book, an 8-year-old, whoever, and see those pictures. There needs to be a reasonable barrier between a child and that book. Thank you.
Yes.
I was not planning on coming up here. I'm hoping my heart doesn't jump out of my chest. My name is Robin Stearns, live at 222 East Jefferson, Apartment 3. I just want to mention, whether this book is for trans or gay or straight, this book is not appropriate. This book is not for kids' eyes. The pictures, and you cannot say that the pictures in this book are not pornographic pictures. They are cartoons. That does not make them appropriate for children. These pictures are vile. They are disgusting. I don't care if the book was for straight people. I would be up here doing the same thing. Is there a policy in the library to prevent kids from going in the adult section and looking at this book? Is there a policy that prevents kids from checking this book out without their parents present? Are we preventing that? Because if it's in the library, the kids are going to find it and they're going to see it.
That's true.
I don't want my kids to see this book. This book is disgusting. Again, if this book were for straight people, I would be just as disgusted. This is porn, this is grooming, and this is not appropriate.
Yes.
If your kids need help discovering who they are, you don't lead them to a pornographic book. You bring them to counseling. You have them open up to their parents. You have the parents open up to the kids. But you don't show them a cartoon porn book to help them learn who they are. This is inappropriate, and I cannot believe we're still discussing this in Pella, Iowa. If we don't hold our ground, this opens us up to everything. We have to stop this. This is not okay. I've been here for 30 years, and I cannot believe we're discussing this again. This is not okay,
That's right.
whether you are straight or not. This is not okay. We can't, what are we doing? Take care of our citizens, take care of our kids, protect our kids.
Yes.
This is not okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Joe Bailey. I live at 1956 Clemens Street in Otley. I'm here to encourage the City Council and those present to consider amending the policy as one way to potentially address this issue. It seems to me that this conversation that we're having tonight revolves around two different premises. One premise, assumption, is that promoting this type of a book is, or having it available, is helping build up our community, helping create it more inclusive or diverse. The other premise is that actually is tearing down the community, and that encouraging promiscuity, encouraging changing of one's sex, encouraging these things is actually damaging to society. And I would put to you that the latter is indeed the truth. Just look at the statistics on suicide rates. Look at the statistics on how people are affected by pornography and other things. Look at how it has wrecked families and marriages. Look at how it is destroying our society from the inside out. And of course, look to God and God's law and how He built this world in its natural order and how He made things to work. And when we try to work against nature and God's law, they break and they do not work, and our community gets destroyed. And so I would put forward to the council and our librarians and those who have influence over these things to purchase and to acquire books and materials that will build up our community, that will make it a better place for us to live, that will not promote promiscuity, that will not promote things that will destroy our community, that are immoral at the most fundamental level. And so that is what I would encourage you to do. I've looked at the policy and read through it. It's very focused on avoiding censorship. There is truth to censorship has been used in many times in history to put down good ideas, to put down moral things, to put down that which would be good to have free and open. And that's one of the things our founding fathers were very concerned about. That's the basis of the First Amendment. But that doesn't mean we should replace censorship with blind foolishness and immorality or wickedness. We should focus on putting forth that which is true and beautiful and good. We should spend our time and our resources on promoting those things will help our children and our families engage in building great relationships, in building great families, in building our community, engaging in their churches, engaging in the community. We should be putting our funds and efforts towards that, not towards this immorality. Thank you for listening.
I'm Ann Petrie. I live at 1008 Broadway Street in Pella. I've lived in Pella for 35 years. I have been hearing a lot tonight about morality and about God and about community standards. And the implication that I get from that is that the speakers who use those terms assume that Pella is a monolith, that everybody in Pella is Christian, everybody ascribes to a particular approach to Christianity. I'm here to say that Pella is not a Christian community. Pella is a unit of civil society. Pella has many churches. Pella has many Christians. Pella certainly does not have a population made entirely of Christians. Pella has Jewish residents. Pella has Muslim residents. I'm sure there are other faith traditions represented, though I can't speak directly to that. There are those who do not particularly ascribe to any faith tradition. By the laws of the universe or of the United States, that's okay. That's what living in a civil society is about. That's what the separation of church and state is about. I defend the right of church leaders to instruct and direct their own parishioners in what is moral and what's not moral. I do not support in any way those guidelines coming from a unit of civil society. Not all faith traditions believe that homosexuality or transgenderism is a sin. And having known a number of transgender individuals myself, including a member of my own family, this is not something that is taken on frivolously. This is not, oh, I'm tired of being a girl, I think I'll be a boy today. This is a very, very difficult path. I can't claim to understand it personally, but I have to trust the experience of those who have gone through it, and my particular conception of God is that God loves those folks just as much as I love, or just as much as God loves me. So that's what I have to say. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Jamie Marsall. I live at 1543 Elmwood Drive. I think, to speak to the last speaker, one way that we can speak about civil society in a way that I think would be agreeable for a diverse community, which does have a wide variety of ethical or religious beliefs, would be to understand the historical precedents that society has historically protected children. Yes. By adults in communities recognize that they have a responsibility to not place burdens upon children inappropriate for their age and understanding. Most of the laws that we have regarding obscenity tend to be age-related. And so I would say that I don't think that has to be a thing necessarily that we tie to any particular church teaching. It's just what adults have always done that cared about the children in their midst. A lot of people refer to this particular book as an adult book and that it should be shelved in the adult section. I think that's disrespectful to the author, who has specifically said it was intended for young adults. The age range for a young adult library section is 12 to 16-year-olds. The book was intended for that age range. It won awards based on its audience being that age range. They're not adult. It's not like it's won awards for being a classic adult novel. Schools have had to deal with its school boards because it's geared toward students, minors, which means that it falls within an adult decision in terms of whether or not the content is appropriate to own it all, to house it all. One of my concerns is that by shelving it in the adult section and having it depict minors, you're encouraging adults to read about the sexual explorations and behaviors and fantasies of minors. My other concern, and I would highly recommend Abigail Schreier's book, Irreversible Damage, on this topic, is Rapid Onset Gender Dysphoria. What adults struggling with gender dysphoria choose to do and how they choose to live, I'm happy to talk about in another context, but we have an epidemic, and young people who do not have the formed intellectual capacity to make decisions about hormonal treatments and body mutilation and other things who are heavily influenced by social media and their peers, are influenced by books like this. And I think history will look back 10, 20 years, and the lawsuits will start to fly at psychologists, at doctors, at parents, at schools who have enabled this rapid onset of gender dysphoria in adolescents, in minors. I'm not talking about adults with formed frontal lobes making adult decisions. I'm talking about what adults are doing and allowing and encouraging amongst young people. I just think it's heartbreaking. Anyway, I highly recommend that book. Whether or not it's the library's responsibility, I think adults in the community have a responsibility to say enough is enough. We're going to protect our young people the way we would if it were anorexia, the way we were if it were white supremacy, some sort of other pandemic, altering the way young people relate to their bodies, to other people, before they're ready for any of those thoughts and experiences. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, we're going to move on then. Can I get a motion for approval of our consent agenda?
So moved.
Panstra,
Support.
Branderhorst, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Armstrong?
Yes.
Branderhorst?
Yes.
Carlstone?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Yes.
Spore?
Yes.
Dia?
Yes.
Motion passed. All right, moving on, public hearing regarding an ordinance amending City Code Chapter 165.33, sign regulations as they apply to Highway 163 monument signage. Mike?
Oh, yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item for those following at home. I'm on slide number 3 tonight. As Mayor DeWard stated, the ordinance that we are entertaining this evening would amend the city sign code to allow for Highway 163, a new sign under a sign code, a monument signage. Now, it is important to note that previously we have discussed this request. It originated from Lely, North American. And what we have up on the big board on this slide is a picture of the proposed sign that Lely would like to place in front of their new corporate headquarters that has been located in Pella, Iowa. Now, the proposed sign that you've seen up on the big board exceeds roughly 200 square feet in diameter, which is in excess of what is allowed under the city code. It is important to note that when we reviewed this previously, there are Iowa communities that do allow signage this size. Most likely, when you find those communities, they are along a major thoroughfare, a highway, state highway, or interstate as well. So, based on our initial review at the council level, we did direct the Planning and Zoning Commission to review this item, and the proposed ordinance is actually the recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission that we're considering this evening. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, if this ordinance were approved and adopted by the City Council, it is important to note some of the highlights of the ordinance that we would have one monument sign per parcel would be allowed under the City Code with Highway 163 frontage, which would include the off-ramps. It is important to note as far as the heights, or before we get there, the third bullet point that we have up there is that the parcels must be occupied and located in one of the following zoning districts. So you have to abut Highway 163. You also have to be in a CC or community commercial zoning district, institutional or limited light industrial or heavy industrial. So that would be M1 or M2 or an institutional zoning district. We do have under the fourth bullet point up here the height limitations for the parcels as well that we have here. And there is a calculation as far as linear footage that determines the length or the diameters of the sign. But overall, the diameter of the sign cannot exceed 200 square feet as well. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Okay. Now, we do have some additional details up there as far as some other requirements under the city sign ordinance. Now, it is important to note, Mr. Mayor, that as we stated, we did discuss this request previously at the council level. Planning and Zoning Commissions held a number of work sessions on this particular item. And in fact, when we look at the Planning and Zoning Commission, they voted unanimously at the December 27th meeting to approve the proposed ordinance that we are considering this evening. And with that, the staff recommendation matches the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation, and we are recommending approval of the ordinance as submitted this evening. And with that, Mr. Mayor, we're more than happy to answer any questions the Mayor and Council may have on this item.
All right, thank you, Mike. Mandy, we have any written comments?
No written comments.
Okay. Council, any comments, questions?
Was there any opposition at all at the P&Z meeting?
Jerry, do you want to address that question?
Absolutely, there was no opposition at the P&Z meeting.
Okay.
Anyone else? All right, any member of the audience have anything to say about this particular item? All right, then I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Support.
Hopkins, Spore, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Spore.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
Danstruck.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed. Okay, moving on to the ordinance, ordinance number 100006, entitled an ordinance amending City Code Section 165.33 sign regulations by adopting regulations pertaining to Highway 163 monument signage. This is the first reading. Anything to add, Mike?
No, sir.
Okay, can I get a motion for approval?
Move to place on first reading.
DeYoung,
Support.
Branderhorst, discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
Danstruck.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Spore.
Yes.
Motion passed.
I'm going to make a motion to waive the statutory rule that we do not have the second and third hearings.
All right, is there
Support.
support? So Banstra, Hopkins, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Danstruck.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Spore.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Move to adopt.
Support.
Banstra, Branderhorst, so motion to adopt ordinance number 1006. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Danstruck.
Yes.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Spore.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on, resolution number 6374, entitled Resolution Naming Depositories. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item. For those following at home, I'm on slide number 6 this evening. And as council is aware, on an annual basis, we approve depositories in places where we can invest city funds at. And generally, the policy has been that we invest in banks that have corporate headquarters or offices located within Pella. The resolution that we have this evening authorizes city staff to deposit up to $30 million in any one of the financial institutions listed up on the big board. And once again, Mr. Mayor, it is important to note that this is an annual resolution. It's also a requirement of the state of Iowa as well. It just approves depositories where city funds can be deposited at. And with that, we'd be more than happy to answer any questions the mayor and council may have on this item.
All right, can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Support.
Branderhorst, DeYoung, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Danstruck.
Abstain due to my paycheck.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Spore.
Yes.
Motion passed. Okay, abstract of bills number 2094. Can I get a motion for approval?
Move to approve and issue warrants.
Support.
Branderhorst, DeYoung, discussions, questions? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Reindeerhorst.
Yes.
DeYoung.
Yes.
Danstruck.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Hopkins.
Yes.
Spore.
Yes.
Motion passed. Any council member have any other business needs to be addressed? Any member of the public have any other business you would like to address the council with this evening? Okay, seeing none, we will adjourn our regular meeting to our policy and planning. Does anybody need a break? Okay. So our first policy and planning discussion is a review of the Pella Public Library organization structure and collection of development policy. And so the purpose of this discussion is educational and for education purposes. Obviously, we had a book challenged by community members. I think I've been told this is the first book that's ever been challenged in the public library. And so it's a new process. And
Sorry, can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
There's some of these you could probably use, but there hasn't been any that yet. So.
Are they gonna open it up? Do you know if they're gonna open it up to people saying stuff?
It's been open.
Hold it. You two having a conversation on your phone?
The website and.
Who's on the phone? Do you want to make a comment? I don't know. I was interrupted, man. Okay, so obviously we had a book challenged. First time it's happened. There's a process in place for that. Obviously, it's been around a long time, and I can honestly say that I've been a mayor for 2 years, and how the library works and the structure and all of that policy is not something that I delve deeply into, and so I think it's really important, and I think most of the council members probably would be in the same boat, and so I think it's really important for us to understand how the library works, because it is slightly different than most of our other departments. And so I've asked Mike to go through a pretty thorough, and if you know Mike, you know it's going to be thorough, educational process for all of us, so that we know how the process works, how the library is managed, and those kind of things, what we as a council can and can't do, and those kind of things. So there are no decisions being made tonight. This is strictly a policy and planning session in which we have a frank conversation amongst the council. We're going to learn a lot of things tonight, and then our result of a policy and planning session is for council to give direction back to staff if we want to go with this anywhere. Okay? So that's what's happening tonight. That's all that's happening tonight. We're not making any decisions about the book or anything. We're going to learn about the library, how it functions, and then if we want to pursue it further as a council, we will instruct staff to get that, prepare that to be put on for an action item at a later meeting. Okay? So I want to make sure everybody understands what we're doing here. So, Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item, and for those in attendance and those going at home, I'm on slide number 8 this evening. As Mayor DeWard stated, the purpose of this policy planning discussion is to discuss the library, Pella Public Library organizational structure and their collection development policy. Now, as background, as the council is well aware, this session was requested after the city did receive concerns related to the purchase of the book Gender Queer. Now, it is important to note that the Library Board of Trustees did review these concerns in their formal, as part of their collection development policy, as the expressions of concern at their December 14th meeting, and they found at that particular meeting that the book was purchased in accordance with established library policies. As further background on this, the City Council did receive concerns on the same book challenge at our December 21st meeting. Now, what we have listed on the following slides is general information as far as how the Pella Public Library is organized, and some general statistics. And once again, this is making sure that everyone's on the same level of education and information, has the same information as we consider this item in the future. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, overall, I think it's a fair statement when you look at the Pella Public Library. It's intended to serve as a resource for the community. It's also, I would say, a very heavily used library. And when we look at the statistics of the library, we have approximately 9,700 card holders. The library as a whole, when we talk about policies, particularly collection development policies, it's very important to understand we have a number of items in our collection. We have approximately 81,000 items in our collection. And on an annual basis, we usually add somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,000 items annually to the library's collections as well. Now, this last fiscal year that ended on June 30th, 2021, we had more than 253,000 items that were borrowed from the Pella Public Library. So as we talked about policies at the library, it's very important to understand that there is very heavily used a library, and there's a number of items that the library currently contains. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Equally important to note, one of the most important takeaways this evening from tonight's discussions is when we talk about the organization of the library and the parameters that it operates under. It operates under the under the City Code Chapter 22, that is the Library Board of Trustees. And if you were to review that chapter, the code section, what you'll find is under the City Code, the Library Board of Trustees is responsible for all library affairs. That includes managing the facilities and including hiring personnel and the head librarian of the library as well. It is important to note that the City Council, when you look at the formation of the City Code, the mayor and council are charged with appointing the Library Board of Trustees. In addition, the other main charge of the Pella City Council is on an annual basis. The Pella City Council approves financial allocations to the Library Board of Trustees. So if you were to look at the intention of the City Code, it's almost like the Pella City Council appoints the Library Board of Trustees members, and then we approve financial allocations to the library. The Library Board of Trustees decides on the financial allocations, how the library is operated. They are responsible for the operations of the Pella Public Library. Equally important to note that Iowa Code section, which we have adopted, and it's referenced in our Chapter 22, but Iowa Code section 392.5 states or requires that any proposal to alter the composition of the library board or change the charge of the library cannot be approved by the Pella City Council. It takes a referendum within our community. So as we consider items this evening, the two takeaways that we have to date is the library is a very heavily used entity on there. It serves as a resource for the community. And also, Iowa Code limits what the City Council can do on this, as far as any type of charge to the library board, or as I would say, the charge or mission of the library or composition of the board. Not that that's been proposed, but it's just very important to keep in mind what the Iowa Code has as far as the requirements. So let's go ahead, please, Mandy.
Before you
Yes, sir.
go, make sure if you have any questions along, because I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have two. Chapter 22 of the City Code, any idea when that was adopted?
We believe when we look at it, Mandy, correct me if I'm wrong, I want to say either 1977 or 1978 was when we adopted the Library Board of Trustees model of governance for the Pella Public Library.
Okay. So then the last paragraph, the Iowa Code section 392.5, can you touch on what those two words mean, composition and charge?
Yes. What we would believe and what's been interpreted, at least that we've, based on our research, and we want to say is it's our research to date on this. When we talk about the composition of the library board, I believe Mandy, correct me if I'm wrong, there's 7 library board members, 6 residents, and 1 non-resident. So, for instance, if the Pella City Council stated instead of a 7-member board, we want to have a 9-member board, that would be a composition in charge as far as the way we reviewed it as well with legal counsel on this.
So it's only the number and the makeup of the, it's not who's on it, but the number and the makeup. If we wanted to change any of that, that would have to go to a public vote.
That is, as far as the number of library boards, we could safely say that would require a referendum. Now, I would say, as far as some other sections, as far as the composition, if there is a proposal from the City Council, we'd want to make sure with legal counsel, the answers that I'm giving tonight are generally on it, so it's the composition. Now, as far as the charge of the library board, if the City Council were to propose any type of authority that would be removed from the library, such as what's required under City Code or stated under City Code, and includes facility management, responsible for all affairs of the library, it's been interpreted that that could require a referendum. But that's something we'd want to make sure that we have legal counsel review before we made any changes. And that's probably the key takeaway on this, that if there are proposals to alter either the composition or the mission of the Pella Public Library or the responsibilities of the Library Board of Trustees, that we'd want to make sure that we conferred with the city's legal counsel before we give a definite answer to those questions. Very good questions, Mr. Mayor. Okay. Now, as we we stated earlier, if you look at the two main responsibilities of Pella City Council as it relates to the Pella Public Library, that's appointing the Library Board of Trustees. The other one is approving financial allocations for the Pella Public Library. And what we have listed up on the big board, and for those following at home, I'm on slide number 11 this evening. We have kind of a financial overview of the Pella Public Library. And to walk everyone through this, what we have here, the far right column that we have is for the fiscal year ended on June 30th, 2021. We also have, for comparison purposes, the fiscal year ended on June 30th, 2020. Now, overall, what you'll see up there is total revenues is somewhere right around the neighborhood of $78,000. That's total revenues outside of the city of Pella. As far as federal and state grants, we range between $9,000 to $12,000 per year. Library fines and charges somewhere between $12,000 to $15,000 per year. The other big financial contributor to the Pella Public Library is Marion County. Marion County does award a financial allocation to the Pella Public Library, and it's for the use of people outside of the city of Pella. So that's very important to keep in mind. And on an annual basis, Marion County's allocation to the Pella Public Library usually ranges somewhere between $50,000 to $53,000. It's based on a formula that they incorporate for all libraries within Marion County. It's my understanding that it's based on usage of the libraries, is just a general overview of that. Now, as far as expenditures that we have, and this is pretty typical for the libraries, we're usually somewhere in the neighborhood of $700,000 to $720,000 in annual expenditures at the library. That accounts for the personnel, the operations, as well as the capital improvements for the library. Now, as far as operations, that's all operational costs. That's just not the collection and development or collection and buying of materials. That's the operations. That's utility costs for the city as well. So when we look at the total expenditures, we're somewhere between right around $700,000 to $720,000. So in our eyes, the way we look at this from a city administration standpoint is we look at outside revenues that a department has, and we also look at their expenditures, and the difference is what's commonly referred to in our world as net general fund support. Net general fund support generally entails, when we talk about general fund departments, property taxes from the city of Pella. So if you were to look at this from the library's perspective, as far as net general fund support and property taxes that they require to support their operations, usually that's somewhere between $625,000 to $640,000 on an annual basis. So with that, if you were to look at our roles and responsibilities, there's roughly approximately 7 library board of trustees for appointment that are recommended by the mayor, voted on by the mayor and council. As far as the financial allocations, usually it's somewhere right around $625,000 to $640,000 per year that the Pella City Council approves on an annual basis. And so before we go on with beyond the finance world, is there any questions on the financial operations of the library?
Is the appointment from the non-city resident to the trustees tied to the Marion County contributions?
As far as the appointment to the non, I believe, Mandy, help me out on this, I'm going off memory, but that has to be recommended by the mayor for the non-city of Pella, and it's actually approved by the Marion County supervisors, correct?
Yes.
What are the qualifications for that seat? Is it like in the Pella School District, or
I would have to look
just
it up.
have to live in Marion County?
Rural Marion County.
I'm
You
sorry?
need to be a resident of rural Marion County.
You have to be a resident of Marion County? Okay, but school district doesn't matter?
No,
Rural,
as long
but,
as they are a
okay.
rural resident, they can't be a resident of Knoxville or another incorporated community.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's go ahead, please, Mandy. Now, as far as the library collection development policy is concerned, it is important to note the policy, and we have some of the highlighted points up here, and I won't go through here verbatim because I believe we did include the policy within the council packet as well. But it is important to note that as far as the individual, and one of the key tenets of the policy holds the right of an individual to access information. It states in their policy that even though they recognize the content may be controversial or unacceptable to others as well. Now, as far as the purchase of materials, and to kind of give an overview how that process works through the collection development policy, that through the policy actually delegates the selection and acquisition of materials to the library director as well. And how the intent of the policy is the director purchases the books and materials. If there are concerns with those books and materials, residents or users or patrons of the library can fill out what's called an expression of concern. And to oversimplify the process, the expression of concern, usually the first step of the process is meeting with the library director. If that does not resolve the concern, then they have a chance, the library director responds in writing specifically to the concern. And if there still it remains outstanding at that point, the patron can ultimately request a hearing with the library board of trustees as far as whether the book's appropriate or not for the Pella Public Library. And that's the Pella Library Board of Trustees, when it relates to expression of concern, is the final decision maker as far as any type of expressions of concern. And I will like to state, as far as the policy, and based on what we can tell on this, the policy appears to be based on the American Library Association's guidance, and it adopts several of the American Library Association's policies as a part of our policies. The Library Bill of Rights that the American Library Association put out, that's actually adopted as an appendage to the Library Collection Development Policy. So the oversimplification of things, as far as the library materials and acquisition of materials, the policy delegates that to the library director. If there are concerns with library materials, patrons can request or fill out what's called an expression of concern. The ultimate decision maker on any type of expression of concerns is the library board of trustees. And finally, the other takeaway is the policy appears to be developing guidance with the American Library Association. So before we go on, is there any questions as it relates to the collection development policy?
Yeah, so on the appeal or the challenging of what the process, the way the process you just stated, which we're all pretty aware of now, that's all in that code, in the code that we, code, I forgot the number now already, but that's in the code, and there's no, beyond the board of trustees, there's nowhere else to go at this, with the current code.
Yeah. Now, well, Mayor, we'll follow up specifically to that question, and I'd like to defer that to the city attorney. But it's our understanding in conversations with legal counsel that Chapter 22 delegates the operations and affairs of the library to the Library Board of Trustees. And so when you look at it as it relates, I think there's even verbiage under Chapter 22 that talks about, even gives them authority to purchase library materials under the city code. When you look at how the library is operated, the Library Board of Trustees adopts their library collection development policy that they have. Now, through the policy, they delegated their authority to purchase materials to the library director on this. If there are concerns about materials that are purchased at the library, they have a process that's called the expression of concerns. So I'm not sure the Pella City Code specifically identifies expressions of concerns or collection development policy, but it delegates affairs and management of the library to the Library Board of Trustees. But we'll double check with legal counsel on that one as well.
So the ALA sets the guidelines that our library follows, correct? That's what they're following. But the ALA doesn't contribute financially to the sustainability to our library.
Let me try to answer that. This is based on my understanding. I would say we do have the president of the Library Board of Trustees here this evening, along with our library director. As far as the financial allocations, we're not aware of any financial allocations that are received or financial revenues that are received by the City of Pella, by the American Library Association on that. As far as the library policies and their collection development policies, that's the charge of the Library Board of Trustees. And it's also my understanding that they choose to adopt guidance from the American Library Association. That's their decision on it as well. So,
Mara, could you explain the relationship between the library and or do you pay a fee to be a member, or?
Gonna come up so I don't have to,
Yeah,
project a little bit.
yeah, I appreciate that, just for clear up my confusion, what the relationship between is with the ALA.
Of course. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Mara Strickler. I'm the director of the Pella Public Library. And the American Library Association is a professional organization
that helps to provide the foundational ethics for the profession, and is the institution that accredits every Masters of Library Science program nationally. There are some that are non-accredited, but those are outliers. And so that is how the ALA informs the library policy. It is not a funder of the Pella Public Library or any public library in the country.
Do we pay a fee to be a member of that association?
So there are professional fees or professional memberships to the American Library Association. What is more common is for us to be, as a staff, be members of the state Iowa Library Association, which is a subdivision of the American Library Association.
Thank you.
May I ask a question? When you said the word accreditation, and you said that master's librarian, and that's a personal, professional. What does the whole body of a library to get accredited? What's the steps? Who does that? Who is in charge of that process?
So at the federal level, it's the Institute for Museum and Library Services, IMLS, and they provide the expectations and standards both for professional endorsement of individual librarians, as well as for the accreditation of libraries as institutions. And that is funneled through the state library of each state. So.
And what does the state require for accreditation?
So each individual professional librarian goes through a endorsement, which is renewed every 3 years, demonstrating our degree and or our continuing education in the field. And then the institutional accreditation is again done every 3 years, where we inform the state library of policies that we're required to have and any other required information that they may ask for. We also go through an annual report to the state library, which provides information regarding our annual checkouts, our annual expenditures, our annual programs, and staffing information, as well as other annual updates.
And then the one more, then, is that accreditation required by Ken's group, the state legislator?
The accreditation is on a 3-tiered level. So there's 0 to 3 tiered libraries, 3 being the top tier, and that speaks to the way that each library meets the needs of the community as far as expenditures, circulation, programs provided, formats provided, that type of thing. And that does impact the funding that is received from the state, but it is not a requirement.
All right, thank you.
And something that has occurred to me through all of this, do we have a responsibility as a local library to protect an author's copyright privileges?
We are expected to follow copyright law.
Okay, because there's been an awful lot of photocopies made of this particular book.
And that, again, there's a difference between the institutional level and the personal usage. But as an institution, we are expected to follow copyright, and then, of course, individually, folks are expected to follow copyright laws.
Okay. Evelyn, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that with this whole thing with the American Library Association, that if you've been paying attention within the last, remember we've been talking about the last year or two, many, many cities are pulling away from that.
Okay.
I'm trying to understand, as a community, why do you feel that being a member of the ALA is so important? I mean, that I have read over their guidance over and over and over again, and perhaps you can bring me around to a different angle on this as to where's the merit. That's where I'm having a hard time. I'm having a real disconnect with the ALA?
So the American Library Association is a member-led professional organization which has been instrumental to helping guide the professional ethics of librarianship over the past at least century, if not longer. It has been extremely beneficial in helping provide foundations to the freedom to read and access to information that really help support public libraries to meet the needs of the entire community, not just one portion of it. And so the foundations that they provide have been very beneficial to, I think, public libraries and the communities that they serve.
Thank you.
Okay, move on.
I have a question for Mara.
Yep.
Mayor, sorry. You spoke a little bit about the ranking the libraries get. I received some information from somebody, so I just want to clarify how they do that. You purchase certain books that meet certain requirements. Those are worth more points versus like a different book, or how?
It's not a matter of the content of the books, but how many materials you provide for different age ranges, and whether or not you have a collection that meets the population size that you serve and that type of thing.
So it's only based on age range, or is it based on content?
It is not based on content.
It's only based on, you have 1,000 kid books and 1,000 this and 1,000 things?
How books are classified is a portion of it, but content is not a consideration.
And what classifications of books do they rank as higher? Or put more
It isn't a matter of
priority
higher, it's a matter of if you have enough of a certain type of material to meet the needs of the size of community you serve.
Yes, Robin?
Laura, would you say the ALA is similar to the American Bar Association or the American Medical Association?
I would say it's equivalent to any other professional organization.
Yeah. And also the role that it has played in the sustaining of free public libraries.
Absolutely. So one role that the American Library Association plays, as well as its state subdivisions, is to help advocate for librarians and libraries in their communities. And so that has been a very important role of both the national organization and the state's library organizations.
All right, let's move on.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Mara.
Mandy, can we go ahead, please? Move on, please. All right. For those following at home, I'm now on slide number 13 of the presentation that we have this evening. Now, as we stated previously, when it gets to the expression of concerns concerning the book Gender Queer, we received approximately 20 expressions of concerns. Now, it is very important to note the Library Board of Trustees, when they reviewed this item, there was 2 of those expressions of concerns and 2 individuals that chose to have a hearing conducted at the Library Board of Trustees. And from their standpoint, they reviewed the 2 that filed the appeal to the board. We included all expressions of concerns that we received in the City Council packet for council's information on this item as well. Now, generally, just to summarize the item, as far as the concerns, they really related to 2 things. That there were allegations that the book was obscene, and there was also concerns about the ability of minors to access the book as well. From city staff standpoint, from the library staff's standpoint, the reason the book was purchased was because it was in high demand at local libraries, which makes it difficult to borrow from other libraries. In addition, the library staff also stated that the book had been well reviewed and believed it met standards for both artistic and literary merit. And finally, as far as the shelving and where that's located at, this book, the library staff decided to shelve the book in the adult collection due to its mature content. Now, as far as the Library Board of Trustees, they heard the concerns from the public during their December 14th meeting. They also heard the library staff's position. After hearing this and considering all the information, they voted unanimously at their December 14th meeting to maintain this book in the library collection because I believe if this is incorrect, they stated that the book was purchased in accordance with established library policies, was the reasoning on this. We gave, as far as we provided the City Council with the Library Board's decision as well as minutes, draft minutes from their December 14th meeting as well for the Council to review. So before we go on from the expression of concern, is there any questions on either the expression of concerns as it relates to the specific book challenge or the process in general?
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
Can I make a comment pertaining to this?
Yeah.
Would you like me to stand up?
That's fine, just so you can hear it.
Before our last city council meeting, I took it upon myself to call the Barnes & Noble stores across the state of Iowa with regards to this book. Not one of the Barnes & Noble stores had this book on their shelves. Not one. But you can order it. You can order it. But why would they not have this book on their shelves too? Something really interesting about that. I took it a step farther. I called private bookstores that I could find in the state of Iowa. None of them have this book on their shelves either. And one of them told me they're not interested in getting this book for patron. That's something I'd like to let you all know.
Okay, let's move on.
All right, yes, Mr. Mayor. Okay, let's go ahead. Now, as far as options on this matter, we realize tonight is an informational meeting, but in looking at potential options in the future that the City Council may have on this, and once again, please keep in mind, as far as the Pella City Code, if you want to look at the City Council's role, it's appoint the Library Board of Trustees, and also we approve financial allocations to the library. The Library Board of Trustees manages the library. So anything that is done at the library is, by its very nature, from the City Council level, will relate to policies that pertains to the Pella City Code. So please keep that in mind. We listed up 4 options as far as a future course of action for Council's consideration on this matter. We'll go through them very briefly on this, but option number 1 would be simply due to the number of concerns the city's received in this matter, the Council could request the Library Board of Trustees to review its policies and report their findings at a future report back to the City Council on this. Review topics could include, as it relates to this matter, and in general, the collection development policy, the criteria for determining which books and collection materials are purchased versus which books and materials are obtained via interlibrary loan on it. So, in other words, the policy as it relates to which materials are stored in the library. Secondly, we've heard one of the concerns that was been brought to the city as far as the policy for not restricting access or checkout or the checkout of mature content by minors. So that could be requested by the City Council. Once again, when we talk about requesting the Library Board of Trustees to review these items, they operate the library, so anything that we did would not necessarily be a mandate, it would simply be a request as it relates to their policies. Option number 2, if the City Council feels that the Library Board of Trustees did not consider all the applicable facts in the book challenge of genderqueer, the City Council could request the Library Board of Trustees to review the book again for appropriateness. Again, so that's always an option that we could request. Option number 3 is no suggested changes, do nothing on it. Option number 4 would be any other proposal that the City Council would want to consider in this matter. And so, again, by listing these options up here, they're intended to facilitate discussions on a future course of action. That's all it simply is starters up there as far as any type of potential action that the City Council may take in this matter. So with that, Mr. Mayor, from city staff standpoint, we are seeking direction on this item from the City Council. And that concludes the staff presentation this evening. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions the mayor and council may have on this item.
Okay, thanks, Mike. So I guess my first question is, does everybody feel like they understand the code, how it works? If you had questions along the way, you should have asked them. I did. So if you understand that, then
yep.
Obviously, that's the easy part. The hard part is to figure out if we want to pursue any, these are suggested steps we could take, or as the fourth one said, any other option that's not listed above. This has been obviously, I'm sure your email inbox has been full, like mine has for the last week. I will say I've heard from both sides a lot. I've heard a lot from both sides of those that feel we should keep the book, those that feel we shouldn't keep the book. So we have very diverse opinions here. So it makes it obviously hard for us or council to decide how to move forward, what to do. But we can't always choose what comes before us, so we have to discuss it and talk about it. So,
well, I've made a point of reading the book cover to cover, and I can see where there are some objections, depending on your standards. Parts of it can be called pornographic. There are lots of illustrations because that's what the author does for a living. It also has some real merit on how it addresses a very difficult subject. And once again, we have to consider freedom of speech because we took that oath before we sat in these chairs. I would like to see the library board discuss how they might possibly restrict access to books with mature content. You know, we've heard two terms tonight, young people, i.e. adolescents, teenagers, and then also children. And books of content like this should definitely be restricted from children. In my opinion.
I'm going to dovetail off of something you just said. I brought my oath of office because I took it the last meeting. And I take it really seriously, maybe to a fault at times. And then I delve into research. And really, the oath isn't that long, but it's pretty succinct. So I'm going to read it with your permission. I, Lynn Branderhorst, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and I will faithfully and impartially, to the best of my ability, discharge all duties of the office of City Council, Ward 1, in the city of Pella, Iowa. And then I signed it. So when I reread this, I realized that those of us that are up here were held to a different standard. We don't follow the ALA. We follow the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa. So then I went a little bit farther, and please indulge me. I'll tidy it all up in the end. Iowa Code 728.1 clearly defines a minor as a person under the age of 18. The author clearly states that this book was written for adults with the intention of being read by individuals ages 12 to 18. Now, under the Iowa Code, that's a minor right there.
Lynn, can you say that again?
I can even hand this down to you.
You said about the author.
About the author, she clearly states that, and I'll read it. Let me find it a minute. I have pages of notes on this. Schools are banning my books, but queer kids need queer stories. She was awarded the Alex Award. The Alex Award is presented to authors who, for books that are written for adults, but have special appeal for ages 12 to 18. 12 to 18 in the state of Iowa is a minor. So we have an award given, which is called the Alex Award, to this author, and both of them state that their targeted audience or their appealed audience is a minor. So looking at all of this and trying to look at the pictures, and I'm not even going to explain what some of the pictures were, but they are clearly minors in those pictures. My definition, my interpretation is that this, under the Iowa Code depicting these children under the age of 18, is pornography. Yes. Then Iowa Code 7282 has a definition of the minors in periodicals in pornography. And then Iowa Code 728.4, and this is where I became a little uneasy, addresses who cannot and why you cannot distribute materials with this age in there. And inside of this, they go on, it's businesses, estates, and trusts, but they also say that not-for-profits are not allowed to distribute pornography, which depicts minors in there. So based on all of this, and based on the fact that we, all of us up here, are held to a higher standard, not the same standards that the library board is held to, I have a number 4. And would you like me to say it now or later? Okay. I believe that we should follow some of the same policies that we follow with some of the other organizations that our community gives money to. And I'm going to use one that is one of my favorites, is PACE. We give $30,000 a year to PACE, and sometimes more. And in exchange for that, we have someone from council that is placed as a consultant, or someone that comes back to the city council and says, here's what's going on, here's what I'm seeing. If we get complaints or concerns, that person can give us an expert inside opinion on things. So, being a student of Daryl Dobenacker, who is an ex-mayor, and one of the things he did is he placed city council members on the different boards. I would like to propose that we place a consultant from the city council to the library organization. They would not be a member of the board, which I think would then supersede a referendum if they're not a member of the board, to be there for guidance to oversee the taxpayers' money. That was a long-winded thing, and I'm very thankful that you all listened.
Okay, I understand what you're getting at.
Thank you.
I think we, yeah, I don't know, I guess we'd have to figure out if that would constitute what were the 2 words? Composition, whether that changes the composition or not.
Well, I do know, I spoke to some of the Board of Trustees over the course of the week, and I know that actually one of their goals going into this year was to actually get more involved with the City Council. Ironic timing.
Very good.
Now it is very in the spotlight. So I do believe, maybe whether or not it would require composition, I think even hearing what the Board of Trustees also had as maybe some ideas as well, like to partner better, I think would be an option as well.
I agree.
Well, are you done?
I'm not sure
Okay,
yet.
okay.
No, I'm never done.
Going through this, I follow with Mark's, as I kind of land on option 1B, the restriction of that. I look at all segments of society where, movies are 17, where there's restrictions on that. And I think that if we could encourage the library to develop a policy, and I know there's all kinds of written text in the library that would be objectionable, but I think the key in this thing is
is the balloons, the cartoons, the graphics that make it so different from a 50 Shades of Grey, which was mentioned by several people here. So I would like that to be challenged or looked at, and I'm sure there's pros and cons to that, particularly when it comes to age discrimination. But I think that there'd be enough reasonable emphasis that we could have access and to that book by adults only. If an adult needed to go with a child or who if they're a guardian for to go through that book, if they felt that was the right way to parent, that's not for us to say. But at least the book is there that they could get it at that point. At least it's not available for a minor to pull it off the shelf. So that would be the area I'd really like the Board of Trustees to take a strong look at. And there's probably not everybody's going to be happy with that, but I think that's the best compromise. By part of the Constitution you just mentioned is free speech as well, that we have to always be aware of. So that would be where I would probably land on the best place to start for our group to see what the trustees could take a look at that.
I'd say anytime there's an issue that is polarizing, anytime there's an issue that has people on this side of the line and people on this side, pick your hot button issue. There's dozens of issues right now. It's easy, regardless of what side you are on an issue, it's easy to villainize the people on the other side, the people on the right, the people on the left. Make your list. It's always easy to villainize people on the other side, and it's easy to say that there's one right answer and one wrong answer. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, so often there's not always a right answer. There's 50 Shades of Gray in the middle of it. And so whenever I'm faced with an issue like this, whether it be on council or whether it be at home with my family or whether it be in business, my first question is, we've got one option, we've got a second option. Is there a third option? What's something that is there something that can meet the needs or the desires of the people somewhere in the middle that provides a level of understanding that they heard me, they understand my side of the coin. People on both sides can say that. I don't know if there is something there here, but I'm always asking that question. Is there a third option? This side or that side? Is there something in the middle? And secondly, to understand in this issue, in the next issue, in the next issue, in the next issue, for all of us to understand that, for better or worse, all of us are doing the best we know how. The folks up here, we're doing the best we know how. I'm assuming that every person in all of these chairs, that you're all doing the best you know how, based on your worldview, based on the beliefs that you have, based on how you were raised, all of those things. And if we can get to a point, tough issues, difficult issues to discern, to discuss, to figure out, if we can get to a point where I can see somebody on the other side of that issue that I'm really fired up about, if I can see them as a person and say, you know what, I can appreciate their opinion, I can appreciate their values, I can appreciate the fact that this is really important to them. If we can come to the table and do that together as a community, together as individuals, our community is going to be a better place. Our relationships are going to be better, and we can work these things out, and we can find that third option, whatever that may be. It's not going to be easy. It's not necessarily clean cut, but it's something that we can work towards. So I think I'm on board with option 1 or option 4 that Lynn suggested or whatever, but I'm on board for having more discussion and figuring out is there a policy, is there a procedure, are there things that we can put in place as a city, as a library, that help elevate the values of people on any side of an issue, and make the people heard for the most of the population. My 2 cents.
Spencer, are you still with us?
I am. I'm the new guy, so I don't know if I have to chime in or not.
Well, you certainly don't have to. I want to make sure and give you.
I can't see the room, so this is difficult. I would echo some of what's been remarked. I think the people in the audience spoke very well on both sides. I appreciate their viewpoints and their passion. I appreciate the council members' viewpoints and observations as well. I think there's been some really good suggestions already made. My leanings at this point would be looking deeper at some policy issues. The 1B, I think that Calvin mentioned, seems to be one that could be looked at a little more deeply. As one who is a member of several associations, when I heard Ms. Strickland talk, I'd like to learn a little bit more. Maybe I just need to meet with her about what the obligations are to the ALA. Can we operate more independently or not? I mean, just some of those questions that maybe I just need to chase down on my own. But I just want to agree with what Dave even said, that we are all Pella residents. We're all kind-hearted. We're all big-hearted people. We can find a good solution here. And that's it.
Thank you. Lynn, sorry I shoved it in front of you. I didn't mean to.
Oh, it's Liz.
And I'm
Lynn,
Liz,
you're
so
Lynn. She's
it's
Liz.
you.
Sorry. Too many of us.
Okay, so now Liz, it might
Now
be my
Liz,
yeah,
Liz.
okay. Anyway, so just a quick few comments. Like Mark, I also read the book. Yeah, there were parts that were certainly challenging to read and difficult, but overall, I was grateful for the freedom to read that book, and I'm grateful for our intellectual freedom, and that is something that is really important to me. As I think about this conversation around morality and where our role is in that, I would say that it's really difficult, and you're right, we're all struggling with this. We're all wrestling, we all have full inboxes, we all have full ears. And really what it comes down to is morality is different for everyone. And that makes it challenging. But so our hobbies are different for everyone, and reading levels are different for everyone, and religion is different for everyone. And so that's what a community is all about. And I want to stand with our board of trustees. I believe that they made the right decision in offering that. As it relates to the age thing, we talked about 12 to 18. I want to give my own story. It is not related to sexuality in any way, and I don't want to think that I'm comparing my story in any way, but I just want to share a little bit of insight as to me, a little bit of background. So as an adopted child, a closed adoption, that is something that I struggled with. You don't know your genetics, you don't know where you came from, you don't know who your parents are, and it really hits you in those formative years, you're that adolescent age. My parents were not someone I could talk to. But why? Because they were offended. They didn't mean to be, but they didn't want to hear about how I was struggling, not knowing who my birth mom was or my birth dad. They wanted to be my parents. So I just get a little bit, I want to be the voice of this 12 to 18 group that if they don't have a space in their home, that they can go to a public space that we offer as a community. And if they need to learn more, if they need to dig in more, that is an option. Now, I'm open to number 4, as we talked about, looking at how do we potentially monitor some of that, but I do want us to be careful that we're not limiting access. And I do believe that is censorship at a certain level. So that's a little bit about where I am. I would actually probably go with number 3. However, I do think there's certainly merit in continuing to work with the Board of Trustees more. I'm certainly open to the conversation around what that checkout potential looks like, but that's a little bit of my background.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Yeah.
If I may, one comment on censorship. I agree First Amendment issues have to be considered in this. Something that has just come to my mind is also unrelated to this, but Second Amendment issues. Gun owners have rights, but yet we would not see it as an infringement on a gun owner's rights if we ask them to secure their firearms when children are around because they don't know how to properly handle it, damaging to a child. So I guess I just want to say there are nuances to this that imply we can see in other cases, I think with First Amendment issues too. It's not necessarily that we are violating First Amendment rights of people just to secure something and have reasonable barriers in place when we know for minor children, pornography can be damaging. That's all I'm going to add.
Okay, so,
I'd like to ask one question, and if you all can give me an answer, it's a simple question. This is pornography. It's child pornography. How can child pornography make a community stronger? I'm asking you specifically. How can child pornography make our community stronger?
I do not believe that what is in that book is child pornography.
There's blatant pedophilia. There's pedophilia in this book.
Okay, we're not going to get into debate. This was an informational meeting. I appreciate the information that I have. I think what I'm hearing is that the council would appreciate a review of some of these policies to try to come to a change in some policies that may or may not be needed, with someone from the council involved in that discussion. You know, you gotta, from our standpoint, we have a lot of committees, we have a lot of boards, and I'm not gonna Bigfoot any one of those by saying you're gonna do it this way or you're gonna do it that way. I'm not gonna do that. That's not how I operate. So I think that if we can have a discussion with council representative to review some of these policies in light of what's all happened, I think that's a good place to start. And then from that discussion, if we want to change policy or code 22, we have to go through the process to do that. I understand now how the Board of Trustees works, and so this has been a very informational, enlightening meeting for me. So if the council is in agreement, I would say we could start with number one, have a discussion with, I'm not ready to appoint council as ex officios on boards or whatever it would be. But I think having a council member in a discussion with the board in light of what's happened here would be prudent. And so is there agreement that could be a place to start, or you guys, make the decisions? So, and maybe perhaps Lynn, who has done more research into this, would be the right person to be involved in those discussions. And
I'd be happy to do that.
And then, whatever, I assume that out of that there may be some recommendation, maybe not, maybe after discussion, the process that's in place is fine. If there are suggestions from that group, along with Lynn being involved, then we can consider those.
Does that have to be run through legal then, Mike? I'm just wondering, I am happy to do this. I would welcome the opportunity to do it. But would there have to be some parameters as to when, where, why, and how?
Yeah.
Legally?
What I'm hearing is just an appointment of a liaison to the Library Board of Trustees on the matter. We'll run that by legal counsel, and if there are any concerns with legal legal counsel. It's just been simply appointing a liaison to the library board of trustees to review their policies in light of the number of concerns that we've heard on this, and that specifically option number 1. We'll come back to the city council and express those, but otherwise we'll proceed as you instructed, Mayor.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're putting you on the board or anything like that. So
That's
I
fine.
can't see where this would be any
That's
kind of a legal
I
issue.
kind of view this as an ad hoc group to,
Yeah, just a discussion,
on this
review.
particular matter, to focus on it and come up with a consensus.
That's a good way to look at it.
Is that acceptable? All right, so that's how we'll proceed from this point. And what I beg of you, all of you here, I heard from both sides, I don't want to hear anybody tell me that we didn't listen. Because what happens in these situations is whatever decision is made, and it maybe doesn't agree 100% with what you think, then all of a sudden you accuse me of not listening. We listened. We spent a whole lot of time, probably 3 hours now, listening. Very careful consideration. If you don't think what Liz told you, the story she told you was from her heart, then you weren't sitting here listening to her like I was. So don't tell me we didn't hear you. We heard you. And we're going to move forward. And I don't know what the outcome's going to be. But if it's not exactly the way you want it, just please don't tell me that we didn't listen, because we listened.
And I'd like to say thank you for that, and thank you very much for considering that.
All right, we're moving on to City Council Procedural Rules review of our second policy and planning session.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, what we're here to talk about tonight is actually the rules that govern how our meetings operate. These rules were originally adopted by the Pella City Council in 2002. And again, overall purpose of the rules is to ensure an orderly meeting and orderly guidelines, pre-established guidelines for agenda items and how they're addressed by the Pella City Council. And so with that, Mr. Mayor, our intention was not to go through every single rule that we have for how we operate our meetings, but more we wanted to answer any questions that the council may have on questions on rules or considerations if there is any suggested changes to the procedural rules. And so with that, we're looking for input from the Pella City Council, and whatever direction we receive tonight, we intend to actually have formal considerations of these rules at our January 18th meeting. So with that, we'd like to turn the floor back over to the council for input on the procedural rules.
So hopefully, we had a pretty long list of procedural rules. Hopefully you had a chance to review some of that. I think one thing I would point out, because we had somewhat of an issue with this last year, when it comes to agendas for our meetings. There's the procedural rules, the staff prepares the agenda. I may talk to Mike and say we need to discuss this, but when it comes to the actual agenda and the order in which things happen in our meetings, staff prepares that. All of you and myself get that. So if there's ever, because I got kind of yelled at during a meeting last time in which the order in which we proceeded through our agenda, anybody sitting here is going to get that proposed agenda before it goes public. If you want to change the agenda, you all have my phone number, you all have my email address, you have Mike's. If you want something different, let me know. Don't come to a meeting and accuse me of shuffling the lineup because I don't want to hear what somebody says or something. That agenda is there prior to being public, and if you want to change it, if you don't like it, I'm a very reasonable man. We can talk about it, and if it's important. And Kelvin has done it more than once, and I've accommodated his desires. So just make sure you understand that the staff prepares the actual agenda for our meetings, and everybody can have input if you want to differently. So is there anything else anybody saw?
This is on a little bit different front, but there's such a delay in getting the minutes of the boards and committees. If you look at this list right here, they're all the middle of, or they're all November at least. it may not be physically possible by the time they see their minutes and approve them again. If there's any way we can speed that up a little, I'd appreciate that.
In prior years, council has requested to see draft minutes from the various boards, and that's something we could start looking to doing is giving the draft minutes actually out to council. That it greatly accelerate the time that you can see the minutes from the meetings.
You know, I get it, they have to review the minutes and approve them.
But we don't care if it's pretty, do we?
No.
Just as long as everyone understands it's in draft, and the committees, how they operate when they review their minutes, it's their minutes on it. There may be changes to the minutes, as long as there's an understanding with that. In the past, we've provided draft minutes. It's something we can look at doing again if you'd like.
I personally think I had that on my list to ask about too, because I brought that up a couple times. It's such a delayed reaction on our part, and I believe the P&Z board was even talking about some internally getting their draft minutes out early. I think we chatted about that. I think that would be helpful. Then when the draft minutes, excuse me, when they come, where do they go on the agenda then? Are they just for information? Because they wouldn't be a consent thing because we're not approving them at the time. So it would.
How we've handled it in the past as far as the draft minutes is we've sent it out independently from the council packet.
Oh, you have? Okay.
So what we did before was once the draft minutes were prepared, they were sent to council on it independently on that. And then council's formal approval of the minutes occurred after the boards had.
But then if the council member saw something in those minutes that they wanted to bring up or comment on, is that appropriate to do that before the final minutes are approved or not?
We're always open for questions or to address any questions. What we would ask, since they're draft minutes in nature, that you direct any questions back to city administration. We'll try to answer your question or get clarification on them. So.
The other thing that I jotted down when we have appointments for all these boards and commissions, we always look at the how they attended the meetings for the 1 year before. How tough would it be to say for the entire term if we're reappointing somebody, how long they've been there? I just wondered if 1 year was a fair assessment of how well they were involved in the meetings. And I know that's not an item that, that's more of an acting thing, so.
We have the information, and from a staff standpoint, if council deems that's important information to consider any type of board reappointment, we'd be happy to provide it.
And that just means that's not a deal killer for me, but I just thought I'd bring it up. If the other folks think that's overkill, I'm easy doing it the way we're doing it now. But if people thought that was important to see more attendance records, that's something that. We could talk about. So.
I'm okay with a year.
Mandy knows how to do research on her. I asked her questions. She went all the way back to 1940 minutes. About 5 minutes. Computers are wonderful. Right? Okay, anything else? All right, so we're going to go into closed session, which I don't think there'll be any motions when we come out. So we would just ask that we could. But before we go, I just want to say I appreciate the civility in which we had our meeting tonight. KCCI is here, and if you watch any newscasts, you see that a lot of meetings are not always so civil. So I think whoever's going to watch that knows Pella. We can have a discussion that we have quite diametrically opposed views without yelling at each other, so I do appreciate that. I don't think anyone has a motion regarding either closed session to make, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Vanstra, Sporer, all in favor please say yes. Opposed no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Vanstra?
Yes.
Sporer?
Yes.
DeYoung?
Yes.
Branderhorst?
Yes.
Carlstone?
Yes.
Hopkins?
Yes.